About 2 out of every 3 US households owns a pet, and I've recently been thinking about getting a dog. So I've started looking into it and I've noticed how expensive this decision can really be. Sure, you can get a good dog for free if you're lucky, but if you want a certain breed or to get a dog that's healthy, trained, and doesn't have PTSD, you can easily spend thousands of dollars just to purchase the dog. This all applies to cats too, and today I want to help you understand the full scope and weight of owning a pet so you can decide for yourself if it's the right thing for you. Helping people understand the finances of life is one of the reasons why I started this channel, where I make videos about things like if meal plans are actually worth it, or if banks are better than credit unions. So if you want to learn more about how you can save money, make sure you subscribe, and now let's talk about how expensive big dogs, little dogs, and cats are. We'll break it down by the initial expenses, then monthly expenses, and finally lifetime costs. Let's start with adoption. This may sound obvious, but the average cat adoption costs less than the average dog adoption. If you're looking on Pet Finder, which is a widely known database for adopting animals, cats cost about $300 and dogs are about $500, with younger animals usually costing between $50 and $250 more. However, the costs also depend on where you're getting the pet from: a shelter, a breeder, or somewhere else. At a shelter, a kitten or cat can oftentimes cost between $25 and $100. Meanwhile, a puppy or a dog from a shelter is usually between $50 and $500. Going to a shelter is by far the most affordable way to get a new dog. I recently went and visited my local humane society, and they were allowing people to adopt dogs for $50 each. The hard part to this choice is that it's not a good experience in getting to know the actual dog. The second you walk into where all the kennels are, you're confronted with a chorus of barking, and it's just pretty overwhelming. Here's an example. Then when you take each dog out to play with them or just get to know them better, they're just so happy to be outside that they don't pay attention to you, so it's kind of hard to meet the dog. But these dogs need homes, so it's definitely the best place to start. In contrast to shelters, breeders generally charge more, and you're more likely to know what the pet will be like when they're fully grown based on its parents. But I want to say something about puppy mills. Puppy mills suck. Make sure you're not buying from a puppy mill. They are not what breeders are. You need to buy a reputable breeder, not a puppy mill. Anyway, you'll also know more about the pet's upbringing and health based off of its family heritage. When you go to a breeder, purchasing a purebred kitten usually costs between $300 and $1,200 depending on the breed and the color. And dogs from a breeder can cost anywhere between $1,100 and $5,500. So I know this is a huge range, but you don't have to spend a fortune on getting a dog or a cat if you don't want to. If you know where to look, you can find a lot of animals at a really low price. You just have to check with friends, Facebook groups, local rescues, and shelters, and be patient. Usually these places will have small fees for the pets, and that's okay because most of these places don't want people just to take the animals, only to abandon them if it's too hard. It's awful, but it's what happens. Adoption fees also help pay for the shelters and the places that take care of these pets. Regardless of where you're adopting from, you need to know if the pet is already spayed or neutered. We've already mentioned that younger pets tend to be slightly more expensive, and on top of this, they're also less likely to be spayed and neutered. Spaying and neutering usually costs a couple $100 depending on where you go. Around this same time, you're also going to need to make sure your pet is vaccinated, and vaccinations can cost about $100. The initial fees continue. Most people want their pet to have a crate, a bed, dishes for food and water, a leash, and some toys. Cats also need a litter box, and many people like to get a scratching post for them as well. These all seem like one-time purchases, but oftentimes you still have to buy some of these things multiple times as they break. Let's say, for example, you're getting a medium-sized dog. You get a crate for $40, a bed for $35, food and water dishes for $15, a leash for $8, and a bunch of toys for about $20. That's about $130, and all of those prices I chose were the low-end prices. Depending on where you live, you may need to also buy something to keep fleas or ticks off your pet. And finally, some people even have to put up a fence to keep their pet in the yard, which can cost additional thousands of dollars. Finally, we have the ongoing fees of cats and dogs. That's the food, water, treats, some extra toys each year, vaccinations, medical, dental, and grooming costs. If you bathe your own dog and give them haircuts on your own, that saves a ton of money because just one dog grooming can easily cost $50 and can oftentimes go up to $150. On average, because of the ongoing costs, Americans spend between $30 and $75 a month on their cat and between $43 and $123 on their dog. But a part of the reason why this range is so big is that it really depends on the size of your pet. Obviously, big dogs eat a lot more than little dogs, and some dogs need a lot of grooming, I'm looking at you Newfoundlands, and some don't. There's also boarding fees to consider. Do you travel a lot? Because if you do, boarding a cat is about $25 per day, and dogs are about $40 per day, and that can really easily add up. And on top of all of this, there's insurance fees. Not all pets have insurance and it's not required, but it's becoming way more common. Oftentimes, if you go to a vet, they won't even help you with anything specific unless you do a regular checkup first. However, these regular checkup policies get really expensive without insurance. So if you don't go to the vet very often, maybe you can get away without insurance, but it's becoming harder and harder to avoid paying insurance fees. Still, in total, only about half of American pet owners insure their pets. So we've covered adoption fees, vet care, food, grooming, toys, why you should subscribe to my channel, insurance, and boarding, and here's a chart to recap and show you where we're at. Cats are generally cheaper in each category, at least for the initial and recurring fees, but you have to consider how many years you need to pay for your pet. Big dogs live 8 to 12 years on average, small dogs live a few more years than that, and cats can even live longer still. These lifespans influence which pets actually cost most in total. Let's figure out how much buying an average pet would cost from birth to, well, the grave. Let's say you buy a kitten for $300 on Pet Finder. Then you get it neutered, that takes us to $500. Then you pay for vaccinations and we're at $600. You set it up with a bed, toys, etc., and we're easily at $700. Let's say every month you buy its cat food and litter, that's about $50 a month. Now multiply that 50 by 12, then multiply that by 15, and that's $9,000. Add the $700 the cat originally cost. Now you can see that a cat can easily cost about 10 grand with a range from $5,000 to $23,000. Dogs are even trickier to calculate mathematically because of the huge range in sizes, lifespans, and needs for grooming and such. But because they often don't live as long, their estimated total lifetime cost is surprisingly similar to cats, between $5,000 and $25,000. So in the end, the total costs of pets are about the same. Bigger dogs may cost more than little dogs per month, but the little dogs live longer and thus cost more during an entire lifetime. But most importantly, you need to remember that there are lots of costs besides the direct dollar amount. Pets require time, and if you're going to get a dog or a cat, you need to be willing to give up at least an hour a day for a dog to walk and give it outdoor time, and at least 20 minutes of time for your cat each day just to give it attention. If you can financially afford a pet, but you can't afford the time commitment, it's better that you just don't get a pet, rather than get one and neglect it or give it back to a shelter. Now I want to hear from you. How much do you spend a year on your pets? Do you think it's worth it? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe so you can learn more about your personal finances. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.